The foundational research that makes the insights in this video possible was conducted by Sachin Karnik. Think about the last time someone fiercely criticized a movie you love, your chosen profession, or a deeply held political belief. You likely felt a sudden, hot flash in your chest, a quickening heartbeat, and a tightening in your jaw. It is a strange reaction when you pause to consider it. A mere string of words triggers a biological survival response, as if your physical body is under lethal attack. We have to ask why our brains react to a criticized opinion the exact same way they react to a physical threat in the wild. To function in human society, we require labels. We need names, personal histories, and social roles to organize our lives and communicate with one another. Saying "I am a doctor" or "I am an American" is a highly practical transactional identity. It is a completely harmless tool that allows us to operate in the world. The cognitive glitch occurs when the mind forgets that it created those labels purely for convenience. Instead of using the identity as a temporary instrument, the brain starts believing that those conditioned descriptions are the absolute independent reality of who you are. When we mistake a functional description for our ultimate reality, a necessary social tool mutates into a rigid psychological prison. This error is known as psychological identification. It happens when consciousness identifies exclusively with the contents of the mind, mistaking the reflection for the original reality. The I inside your head is not a physical object. It is a thought, assembled from past memories, societal conditioning, praises, and old wounds. Because this constructed identity has no permanent reality of its own, it is inherently fragile. It lacks a solid foundation. That fragility generates constant fear. The ego must perpetually validate and defend itself against any contradictory information to keep the whole mental structure from collapsing. A fragile, isolated mind naturally looks for security in numbers. The individual me expands outward, attaching itself to collective identities like my nation, my religion, or my political ideology. The mind draws a thought-created boundary around these groups and claims them as part of itself. It will then defend those abstract borders with the exact same ferocity it uses to protect its own flesh and bone. When an ideological boundary becomes an absolute identity, anyone standing on the other side of that line is perceived as an existential threat. This process creates the bedrock for tribalism, prejudice, and mass hostility. The vast, violent divisions we see on a global scale are secretly driven by the individual mind's desperate search for psychological security. Once we recognize the ego is causing this friction, our natural instinct is to try and fix it by force. We tell ourselves, "I must control my ego," or "I must stop thinking so much." This is the ultimate trap. The controller is just another thought. One fragment of the mind steps out, elevates itself above the rest, and tries to assume total authority over the other fragments. You cannot use the ego to destroy the ego. Fighting the mind with the mind only creates an endless, exhausting loop of internal conflict. The alternative to this forceful struggle is a concept the philosopher Krishnamurti called choiceless awareness. This aligns closely with the ancient Vedantic principle of sakshibhava, or the witnessing state. It is the practice of observing the movements of your own mind without choosing, judging, or trying to suppress them. When you observe a wave of jealousy or anger rise without getting entangled in the narrative, the authority of that false identity immediately weakens. The illusion loses its power simply by being clearly seen. This realization does not destroy your personality. Your functional identity, your name, your career, your family history remains entirely intact and available for use. The shift is purely internal. You drop the psychological dependence on the identity. When you stop defending a mental construct, your participation in everyday life finally turns into a lighter, frictionless play, a state that is known in Sanskrit as Leela. By breaking away from the rigid confines of the conditioned I, the mind finally quiets down. You uncover genuine human connection, deep inner silence, and true freedom from unnecessary suffering.